Okay, so let's clarify the simplicity of this system, because I imagine back when I first started, I go back and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what all these lines and colors, it just seems intimidating. So let's clarify that this system, right off the bat, without even looking at all this stuff out here, without looking at these lines and colors and candles, this system right here, this little red box, and these two lines right here, tell me right off the bat, I have an invalid trade. My sentiment score is in gray, so gray is a neutral color, so I'm not looking to act on that. And also the gray is beneath, well, actually that's not really relevant, because if the trade was going the opposite direction. So what I'm looking at is that sentiment score currently reads 5 or 610 negative. Okay, so it's now what it's doing is it's interacting over here. Okay, so now I can go over here, because I know that right now my I have a short bias, which agrees with this sentiment score is in the negative territory, so that's a downward, right? And if we're trading futures, or if we're trading forex, unlike like shorting a stock, that's another topic. We don't trade stock. You can use this methodology for a stock system, but we're entry level, right? We don't want to have to put up $25,000 for a pattern day trading requirement. We want to be able to put up as little as $50 on a contract, okay? Or we want to use a prop firm. We want to use someone else's money completely. So the very first thing is let's look at simplification. Again, look at the red box here in the right corner. It says invalid. Our score is 55. Our bias is to the short side. Now that 55 is an indicator that potentially we're getting there, because that's the score is going to show a 15. It's going to show a 55. It's going to show a 60, which is our watch, and it's going to show an 80, which is our valid, and it's going to go from 80 to 100. It's going to remain valid. Now, the other thing we're going to look for is this ignition line right here. This ignition line right here. We want to see that running at 100. Okay, now, what does 100 look like? Let's scan over here. This is 100. It takes off, and it's, as long as it stays up here at the 100, we can stay in the trade, which at that time are we're probably going to be getting over here. We're probably going to be getting, this will change colors to I changes colors to a yellow for watch, and then it changes colors to I think a teal for valid. So right off the bat, we know very simply this is not the time to trade. We can ignore all this stuff here. We can ignore all this price movement, right? Now, but you're going to say, but hey, Liam, it says here I can sell. Well, technically you could sell. However, we want high probability opportunities, right? We want momentum behind the market. We want energy in the market. And that's especially what this is designed for. And this is going to tell us where to gauge it, right? Now look at our negative, we're down at 18 minus. So we've gotten stronger. However, we found statistically that we want to run past this 20, and then obviously the higher this number, or the stronger in our direction the number, I mean that's a 22, because it'll change colors once it crosses that orange. It'll change colors. And then we've also designed it so that this gray line is actually thicker, so it stands out and tells you, hey, make sure you pay attention to this. It's not the right time. Okay? So it's very simple. Now, the VMAX is also very simple. What you want to do is you want to watch for these points to be lower than each other for sell or higher than each other, these points. You just watch the points, okay? And then also it changes color. It changes color if it's in the long or the upward trajectory, it'll turn blue. And if it's going down, it'll turn orange, okay? In correlation with all the other indicators. So these are very simple to use. You know, if you can tell what something's higher or lower, then you don't have to master it right off the bat. You just have to understand that's all you're looking for. Okay? Occasionally we get these the VMAX has really reliable signals. There's one sell signal, which you can see if you look down here, was a pretty strong signal. Okay? Now, these are very infrequent because this is a very this is an advanced tool right here. Okay, an advanced trader doesn't trade every minute of every day. Okay, now over here, here's another one of those signals. As you can see, it was preceding a pretty good downward trend. Here's another one. That's 3 for 3 downward trend, 4 for 4 downward trend. Now here it gets a little choppy to the downside still. Downside, not as strong of a move. Here we go early with a little bit of a resistance, but still to the downside. Okay, so you got the VMAX. You've got the ASC is going to give you this main thing here with warnings to exit positions. A warning to exit a position is an alert to watch for the opposite direction. However, it doesn't always mean that direction's coming. Typically, it turns out that way, but you really shouldn't act on that necessarily, except for to exit. You definitely want to exit when it says, well, again, this is discretionary. You can do what you want to do, but to be on the safe side, you know. And then also, that's it. The simplicity. That's what I wanted to point out to you, the simplicity. I was hoping that while I was doing this little brief recording, that I would get some changes. That's the thing about the trading game. You want to be patient, and don't force the market. You can't force the market. You can't hope the market. You can't pray the market. And all people might have some objection to that. You know, those of you who have a spiritual guidance to you, you'll say, why can't I pray it? Well, this is an unnatural creation, these markets. So prayer doesn't enter into it. Okay? That's just, I actually happen to be a person who subscribes to spiritual concepts, and I've often wondered that, and so I've come to realize, you know, this is a man-made environment. Even, you know, let's go. I'm going to go there, right? Jesus said, Caesar's things to Caesar. Okay? So you can't pray your way through this. Get that through your head right now. You cannot pray your way through this. You have to actually have a system. And then you've got to rely on that system. Now, look at what we've got here. That downside move is probably over. I saw that right here because we've got a higher downswing than the last time. Okay? So, and again, look now we can look at the sentiment score here. Right here, the sentiment score is back at around 9, right? It was up there in the 2021, so possibly we were going that way, but the VMAX reminded us, hey, look, and then guess what? Once we see that, now look, here we go. Now it's all, see, it's moving the other way. We still have look, we had a score of 40, a bias to the short side, so it was weakening. So it's simple. It's very, very simple to use these systems because we've built them for simplicity. Now it's your turn to actually, pull the trigger.